Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Seamless webinar. This session is partnered with AppsFlyer, and we'd like to thank them for sponsoring this webinar. The topic that our speakers will be covering is Survival of the Fastest Mobile Transformation in 2020. This webinar will be moderated by Ece İnanç, Regional Manager of Middle East and Turkey of AppsFlyer, and our panel of experts who will be sharing their knowledge and expertise with you today are Mahmoud Said Ahmed, CMO of Bulkwhiz, Matthew Slidridge, former Director of Marketing of Cleartrip, and Melissa Harvinen, CMO of Matrix Marketer. Before we proceed with the discussion, I'd like to remind our audience that they can send their questions using the question and answer feature, and our speakers will try and answer them. Now, without further ado, can I ask all the speakers to turn on the webcam and microphone? And Ece, over to you.
Thank you, Micah. Hello, everyone. I'm Ece, the Regional Manager for Middle East and Turkey at AppsFlyer. And while you're getting set up and making yourselves probably a post-lunch tea or coffee, I just want to ask how my panelists are doing. Melissa, Mahmoud, and Matt, how are you guys? Is everything okay?
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you.
All good. All good.
Are you all based in Dubai, by the way? I haven't asked you that, actually.
Yes.
That's cool.
I'm actually co-based between Cairo and Dubai.
That's nice. Oh yeah, Bulkwhiz is actually from born in Egypt, hasn't it?
We've got a team here and we've got a team in Dubai, but operations are in Dubai.
Okay, cool. I think actually it would be interesting if everyone in the audience as well could type in the chat where they are in the moment, because I feel like everyone's all over the place, because I'm basically in Turkey taking advantage of the summer and working from home. So it would be cool to see where everyone is. Let's see how, oh, Lebanon, nice. Not everyone's from Dubai. Hi, that is great. Hi, Lisa. Very good. I think I will start now. It's 2 past the hour. So for all our attendees, I know that we've all been attending a lot of webinars in the last few months. So firstly, thank you very much for joining us and making the time. But I think, and also because, you know, I'm biased, but I think our session is going to stand out. Firstly, because our panelists are super interesting. And secondly, for the region, I believe that mobile transition isn't a huge area of focus, while at the same time it is, you know, an area which has proven to be a non-negotiable when it comes to growth. And especially during this, you know, major crisis that we're still in, it's really proven its worth. So for those of you who have been focusing on mobile growth for a while, you will hear today some of the challenges faced by brands who are in the same trajectory as you and how they overcome them. So hopefully giving you some helpful tips and best practices. And those of you who have not yet transitioned to mobile, after this session, hopefully you will see that there is money on the table and that engaging with your customers on mobile will really help grow your business. But I don't want you to hear this from me. I want you to hear it from the brands, from our panelists. So I'm very excited to have Melissa, Mahmoud, and Matthew with me. Please, can you introduce yourselves for our audience? Melissa, let's start with you.
Wonderful, thank you. So I'm originally South African, but I've been in Dubai for about 18 years. And I remember arriving in Dubai and the internet penetration was almost in zero. So things have changed a lot in the last 18 years, and so have our marketing strategies. So I have a lot of insights in terms of how this region has grown. And yes, there are some challenges, but there are also some great success stories.
Great to hear. Mahmoud?
So Mahmoud Said Ahmed, I'm originally from Egypt, but I have grown up and got raised in several parts of the world. I spent a few years working in Asia and North America, working for FMCG companies and technology companies like Unilever and Motorola and partly Google. And a few years back, decided that it's time to embark on the e-commerce journey, and co-partnered with my co-founders to start Bulkwhiz to try to understand how bulk grocery shopping is going to change the face of the business. Recently moved to Egypt, and now exploring how e-commerce is taking on Egypt as well.
Great.
My name is Matthew Sliedrecht. I'm from New Zealand and I've been in Dubai for the last decade. I've worked with companies like Rackbank, launching their Rackbank Direct when we tried to launch a e-bank in the early 2010s. Also with Fly Dubai. So before they had even less than 10 planes, I joined when they had 8 planes and helped growing their digital expansion and Asia and Russia, as well as Africa and the Middle East. And latest project has been with Cleartrip, growing Cleartrip from a consumer perspective and growing their brand within the GCC. So that's focused around UAE and then also rapid expansion in Saudi and the rest of the GCC.
Great. Actually, following this right up, Matthew, Cleartrip has won several awards for their app. And you talked about the expansion into different markets in the MENA region. What was really your experience scaling that growth over mobile in the Middle East?
So, thanks for the awards. We love our Cleartrip app, and we've done a lot of work from the product team to make sure that at Cleartrip, our design perspective is how do we get out of the way of people using our product. So we kind of just don't want to be interfering with people, and so that's made our job a lot easier when it comes to expansion. Our app's been downloaded over 25 million times. So we do have quite a bit of data when it comes to how users are using our products. And then we also have a lot of information from our MWeb experience. So we've got 3 sites. One's the desktop experience. We've got a completely different web experience for mobile browsers, and then obviously our application. For our expansion into specifically Saudi, because when you look at how the different markets react in Saudi, we're looking at about 85% of all of our usage is on mobile. When we look at bookings, that's still sitting about 50-55%, but Saudi is definitely leading the way in mobile first and mobile technology. So when we were launching our app campaigns, Saudi was where we expanded the most, and obviously we use the same techniques that we did in UAE as well as also within India. So we partnered up with some amazing providers on app install campaigns. We obviously have some great technology stacks, which includes AppsFlyer, and then also rapid expansion from a brand perspective as well.
That's great. And anything else you'd like to add to this, Mahmoud, with Bulkwhiz, since it was, born as an e-com company that was digital native?
So in Bulkwhiz, we actually started in mobile platform, and we sort of paddled our way back into desktop. We started with mobile, and actually we've seen over the past year how when COVID has sort of come in, how mobile has actually now become the golden standard of actually any sort of e-com platform. So you take a grocery shopping trip that normally takes 2 hours at a Carrefour or whatever, and it's now down to packed into 5 minutes, where you need to make a purchase decision and you need to sort of check out within that 5 minutes. With COVID as well, the type of basket that people are buying has drastically changed, and being able to sort of support your customer in sort of making that decision faster before they actually enter the platform is the way to grow.
Yeah, and Bulkwhiz operates on a personalized AI shopping experience as well, doesn't it? So it really speeds up that process for the users.
You get to know your customer, what they want, and give it to them before they ask for it.
Yeah, definitely. And Melissa, from your experience at Novo, and now as a consultant, actually, you get to work with a lot of different brands. Yeah. So how do you go about creating mobile-specific KPIs, knowing that mobile is very important, but at the same time, it is not as, the penetration isn't as large in the region. So how do you go about creating these KPIs for the brands you work with?
Well, it just depends at what stage of development they are, because Some brands will have technology that's mobile specific, but many will be using the traditional tools. So Google Analytics, you will have your social media pages. So sometimes you go to a lot of different resources to have a look at what's performing there. You obviously need to have a baseline of some sort. So you need to know who's behaving in what way on which, in which area. And based on this, then you can have a look at what your campaigns are affecting. So if your campaigns are actually starting to increase app downloads or direct more traffic to mobile because you've got a super sticky offer over there, you can then have a look at where you want to direct your funds and how you want to then increase your user experience on mobile. With the user experience, this is also obviously very key because you can track those user experiences too. You can decide how you want to measure the duration of time somebody's using on the site, which pages they're going to. If they come in one direction, are they leaving in another area? Are they coming in on a campaign this way or buying something completely different? So there are a lot of different things that you can have a look at. But, you know, mostly people will be looking at e-commerce, and I look at a variety of businesses, so from a B2B and a B2C perspective. So everyone just has a different journey, and it's just looking at the data that you have and seeing where you can optimize.
Yeah, that was great. Is anything else you'd like to add to this, Matthew, especially with Cleartrip being a very mobile-centric brand? In terms of the KPIs that you used or you defined to grow your app, was there anything specific that stood out?
So I think specifically when it comes to app download campaigns, it's quite a difficult problem to solve because when you look at any partners that you're onboarding, you're normally being paid out at a cost per install. So we pay CPIs to our partners that we work with. But from a business perspective, an install is absolutely useless. It holds no value for you whatsoever other than a vanity metric. So while you pay suppliers at a CPI level, we are, as a marketer or a growth marketer, we have to bring in revenue. So what we've done specifically with all partners is, even though we essentially pay out a CPI level, we then benchmark that at a cost per new user or cost per new install or cost per first transaction, essentially. Payments will come out as whatever it is, plus then we've got a matrix of at what percentage are new customers converting at. So if you are converting at, say, 5% of your new customers, you'll actually get 150% of your target analysis. So we're working with suppliers to say, if you're bringing us high quality traffic, and they're converting, then you'll get paid much more than what you would originally do. And again, we then translate all of those back down to a cost per transaction level, because as a business, that's how we make money. Having millions and millions of downloads doesn't have any value. And that's one of the first things we did when we started growing out our campaigns, is realign our business metrics and KPIs to align with the business, not necessarily how the technology is working or how the install happens. Mm-hmm.
Definitely. And Mahmoud, anything you want to add to this? Because I think I'm very interested, especially because the birth story of Bulkwhiz, like it's straight out of necessity. And then during COVID, I can imagine how over the roof the usage must have gotten. Was there anything that you maybe changed specifically in terms of your KPIs during this time, or did you kind of keep it the same? If you could just walk us through a little bit on that, journey that you've been through.
Absolutely. So it actually all started with the usual KPIs of understanding how you start with customer acquisition and the lifetime value of the customer and how you retain them in. And as I mentioned earlier, we started in mobile, where mobile around grocery a few years back was not necessarily the platform of choice for people to make their grocery purchase. Fast forward into 2020, the world actually completely changed, and all the tools by which people make decisions completely changed. So we found that we're seeing a surge in traffic coming in, and that traffic coming in is actually quite hungry for so many things that we weren't ready for, whether it's the information on the product, whether it's information about how we serve, where we serve, do we have sanitization processes in place, things that customers wanted to ask that is completely agnostic of the product itself or what we're trying to sell. And then all of a sudden you've got that lifetime value of that customer. You've got them hooked because you know that they don't have an option with the lockdown that kicked in, but at the same time, they have a struggle about how they actually make that purchase and how do you actually take them through that buying journey from consideration to actually the checkout. We found that we had to change some certain sequences in our buying journey. So we used to have the customer service button in the bottom, and then we found that it actually was the starting point to a buying journey that people would want to start asking with, do you deliver? And what are the precautions are you taking with your delivery, and what, well before they even looked at what we had to offer. And then the basket itself completely changed. So we never did stock things like masks, and sanitizers wasn't one of our biggest SKUs. And then all of a sudden that saw a surge into like 3,000% increase. And how do you actually work with suppliers to find the source and make sure that you're still giving your customer a seamless experience and a product that is worthy. So that journey was actually was a very sort of eye-opening one, because we didn't know what we didn't know. We were just going in, and then all of a sudden we had to change the rules of the game and really tap into what customers were asking.
Yeah, I mean, it's also I myself have noticed that everyone has, but there's also a new segment of users who are now starting to shop from a mobile app. For example, my parents never did that before, but with the lockdown they had to, and now they realize how easy it is and how convenient it is. So in that sense, e-com brands also gained a lot of new users who will become very loyal, because especially that age group, they'd rather things come to them than going out to the shops and carrying things themselves. So in that sense, I think it has been really good, forced probably e-com brands to learn things very quickly and adapt for this new usage and the new segment that has a lot of questions, just like you mentioned. In that, again, going back to Cleartrip, because there's like a complete difference between what Bulkwhiz experienced during lockdown and what Cleartrip experienced. Matthew, how would you, I know you've left now, but maybe if you can just give us a little bit of an insight on how this was experienced by Cleartrip.
Well, the lockdown for us meant lockdown. So very few people leaving their house, let alone the country. I think for us, one of the things that was most important, that when the lockdown happened, there was so many flight cancellations. I mean, we're talking about everyone who purchased a ticket from any company basically didn't have that flight. We work with over 400 airlines. So working out the processes that every airline had, the different options that consumers had, based on when you booked compared to when you're flying, compared to what the rules of the local governments were, compared to which countries you're flying to. We spent probably 99.9% of our time working with our customers and really trying to make sure they can get the refunds and work out the very, very complex rules that each airline had provided for themselves. So our first priority was making sure that we help customers with refunds and help customers with the different options that they had, no matter where they no matter when they were flying or however they booked. Also, as the situation progressed, there was a lot of changes. So sometimes you were able to get a credit back from an airline with a 25% bonus. Sometimes they wanted money back. Sometimes the money was being held. So top priority to start with was ensuring that we could get customers their money back, or get customers whatever airlines were providing. Once that has been mostly sorted out, the next stage that we felt was that at that point travel wasn't available, and right now it's kind of opening up, but we wanted to, if you can't travel, we really wanted travel to come to you. So we're working on partnerships with large brands, large tourism boards, specifically around when it is safe to travel, this is the options that are there for. Also working with tourism boards on the safety measures that they are doing to ensure that when you can travel, what are the safety precautions they're taking to make sure that it's okay. as well as just highlighting to consumers what airlines are providing from a safety measurement perspective. And then, yeah, again, the complex rules of where you're allowed to travel to for this day or not as things go red or green. And so providing customers that if they are wanting to travel and they feel that it's safe for them to travel, what are the options for them to go to, where airlines are flying to, what are the new requirements if you do travel there, from COVID tests to application forms and things like that. So really trying to be there to support customers if they do want to travel, with all the information they require to make that decision.
And have you used mobile in that, reaching out to these customers with these solutions that you're offering? Was the mobile app used more?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so for us, I mean, when we look at our usage, over 50% of transactions will happen on a mobile device, and the majority of that happens through our app. If you look at it from a usability perspective, varies slightly by country, but you're averaging between 80 and 85% of all touch points with Cleartrip is on a mobile device. And again, the majority of that is through our app experience. So the app makes up a cornerstone of how we interact with consumers and how we ensure we have a long-term affinity with these customers. We're on their phone, we're on their most personal device that they own. So for us, we take great responsibility in making sure that we provide information that's relevant and we don't annoy customers too much.
Yeah, there's an art of using that mobile communication line.
Very much.
And Melissa, so digital transformation is basically a key aspect that Matrix Marketing offers to companies. So I wanna hear your thoughts on where do you see mobile in terms of the priority list for those clients of yours that come to you for digital transformation. Where do you place mobile in their journey of transition?
That's a very good question, and this discussion couldn't be at a better time because Google has now just said that they're indexing mobile first as of September this year. So if Google is telling you that more search is happening on mobile than on desktops, I think that that's a very, very good kind of indicator that mobile needs to be taken more seriously. Of course, we've known this for many years. Google has done a lot of updates where they have been making it clear that mobile was on the rise. So, of course, any strategy that you build, you need to make sure that your mobile experience is appropriate and designed in a way that suits your business. So you have multiple solutions. You could be doing a responsive site. You could be doing separate sites. You could be just doing mobile if that is your only way that you want to target, and that also will come back to which target audience you're looking at. So I think the variables are there, but anyone who's not taking mobile seriously, I think will be struggling in the years to come. I was pulling out a report, I think it was the Media Lab, 2019 last year. They said in the UAE, the usage of smartphones is at 99% penetration. Computers were only at 71% and with tablets at 28%. So when you start looking at those kind of statistics for the UAE, and I'm sure other markets are very similar in this area, mobile subscriptions are 200% against the population. So people we know have more than one phone. So people are using it for business, for leisure. So there's no excuse not to take it seriously. And I think it's something that I would put really high on the agenda.
So why do you think, I'd like to hear all of your thoughts. So mobile usage is so high. I didn't know that. Thank you for that data set, by the way, that, mobile usage is so much higher than desktop and tablet. So we understand that users are using their mobile devices. And when there's an app, when there's a good app, we've heard from, all of you in your brand experiences, the users are interacting. So why do you think there's a low percentage of maybe brands transitioning into mobile? Is that, because I know some of the attendees might probably ask, the budget, and there's budget cuts, especially nowadays. But I think there's there will be a, you know, a high ROI when there's an investment into mobile, and I can hear it from all of you saying the same. Do you have any opinions on why some brands, or most brands in the MENA region, Middle East region, aren't as mobile focused as the rest of the world? Maybe Mahmoud, yeah.
Yeah, I'll give you my perspective on this. I think mobile apps is just a product that got produced after desktop and websites. And I think that's the natural evolution of things. I think the website ecosystem has started probably about 17, 18 years ago. I think mobile apps now is becoming the new reality of how you can engage most effectively with your customer. And that ecosystem requires talent, requires people who know how to do programming in multiple platforms, whether it's iOS or Android, and that doesn't come on the cheap, because the resource and the talent that does the front end, back end is not cheap. It's a rare commodity, and you need to be choiceful about it. So I think companies need to be a little bit more sort of have foresight in saying, okay, if the future is around mobile, because what does mobile offer that desktop doesn't? It gives you the in-app notification. It gives you notification on demand. It starts your conversation with your customer well ahead, before the customer even thinks about the product. And that reality is causing the sort of the rush behind how do we develop mobile apps. And because it's still, I wouldn't say virgin territory, there's a lot of apps out there, but how do you optimize that journey and that conversion journey from consideration to to purchase, to conversion? That's probably the fear that a lot of companies were saying, do we need to start it now? I think with COVID and with 2020 and what's been happening this year, it's not an option. This is how people are consuming and buying.
Agreed.
Anything you want to add to this, Melissa, Matthew?
Sure.
That was a great summary. It also eye-opening for me.
Yeah, I could talk about this for ages. In this part of world, there are a lot of legacy systems. And when you start doing your projects and researching and looking at what you need, there are so many systems connected to each other. And we all know mobile has to have a back end. If you're looking at having a purchase on your database, you need to know that consumer behavior. So to take different legacy systems and upgrade them all at the same time can sometimes be a big challenge. And I think what Mahmoud has said is also very, very pertinent. It's about everybody has the will to do it, but they're not necessarily doing it in the most user-friendly way. Because we all know you download an app, you check it out for 3 seconds, and then you delete it. If it's not giving you that instant gratification of what you expect it's going to do for you, you're not going to use it. So some companies are really doing great things. I must say, over COVID, I must have downloaded 3 or 4 new apps, and they're doing a really good job. So I think it's slowly growing. But I think as long as we have a very, very complicated technology back end, it will be a little bit difficult to get that motivation to invest in changing everything. And that's one of my insights that I've come across.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to recommend new starters about transitioning to mobile, and that is your job at the moment. But if there was one, at least something to start them up. If, a company wanted to really do mobile, but they didn't really know where to start, or you said, that brands very truthfully that they need to give what the users want from the first second they open the app. And if users delete the app right away, how would you go around trying to find out what it was that was missing? I know there's, a lot of things that data is like a huge thing. And I know you would say, you would have a lot of question. Yeah, I know, but if you were to give them a little insight on where to start, at least, what would you say?
I think you have to understand your target audience. You have to understand what problem you're fulfilling. My favorite thing is, what's in it for me? Ask what's in it for me and put yourself in the customer's shoes. What problem are you going to solve? And then start working on a customer journey, perhaps. Look at how your customer engages with you. Do a deep dive into their entry point. How do they first get to know about you, to their last touch point when they've actually gone through a transaction with you. have a look at those aspects and see what problem you can solve. And that for me would be a very interesting way to start. You'd have a workshop, have a discussion around all the different touch points, where mobile can fit in and where mobile can replace anything else, because mobility is what we're answering here, is people on the go, quick, easy, snackable, very easy to use. From there, you can go through the customer experience journey, do your design thinking, have a look at your innovation aspects, and then on the other side, you will have a robust starting point. One of the things that people really need to understand is that it always grows and changes. So whatever technology you invest in, make sure that you're investing in technology that you can easily upgrade, change, evolve, beta test, do all of these things on the go. You don't want to be talking to an IT department and saying, I want to do an A/B test with a few different colors. No, you need to do that as a matter of course. And then you will just iterate. It's growth hacking at its best. From there, then you will just growth hack as you go through and learn what your audience is doing.
That's great. Thank you so much. I'm sure our audience appreciated that insight from you. I think also, like you said, the marketers should really need to work with data and the tech themselves, as opposed to leaving it to another team. And, you know, the whole growth hacking thing also makes different, like the marketing team and the tech team work together hand in hand. Yeah. So in that sense, I will turn to Matthew and ask him, since Cleartrip is a client of AppsFlyer, how do you use, you know, attribution? How do you rate attribution and analytics in general, like data, on your day-to-day life as the marketer?
Well, for me, it'd be similar to how do you rate revenue for an organization. So without having proper attribution for your campaigns, I mean, you're basically shooting in the dark. I mean, you don't really have a job, and basically you're taking pot shots. So for everything, like I mentioned before, even from our payouts perspective and which different companies we continue to onboard and pay and give money that we've earned from customers, everything comes through attribution. So if you look at us from a daily perspective, we've got and our attribution doesn't end at the install base. Our attribution ends at the purchase time, because for us, that's what's the business objective we do. So we track attribution from time to install, and then from install to purchase, and then we track that all the way back to the first source. So for us, yeah, it's like saying, is revenue an important part of an organization? Absolutely. Attribution forms a fundamental part of everything we do from a marketing perspective. I get a daily report, or I did get daily reports from every channel at a breakdown level that includes installs, and that also includes revenue. And we then further break down by geography as well as also by source. So the team and my data analyst sits next to me. So you can see how we prioritize that from Cleartrip's perspective. My team, my data analyst, has always been the person closest to me. And yeah, I think one thing, you talked about challenges with mobile and mobile installs. I think what a lot of people also do forget is that there's a significant amount of fraud issues on attribution specifically. So we've got things like clickjacking, we've got things where people taking installs from the App Store. So don't often plug products, but AppsFlyer, when we moved away from our previous attribution partner, one of the most amazing things is that we could also plug in the fraud protection part of that, or the fraud install. So when we looked at how, we always had it, but it was obviously a separate system. So that kind of broke down in how we attributed sales. With this now being plugged in, we've actually seen a massive change in how we remunerate our partners for installs and for new customers, taking into consideration that we will remove 30 to 40% of fraud bookings. And yeah, AppsFlyer has been an amazing partner in helping us do that.
Thank you. So in terms of just continuing on the data side, because I'm also personally very interested in data, and I was interested in Bulkwhiz, how it understands the user journey through AI. Mahmoud, how would you rate the use of data and tech in your role as the CMO and the marketing?
So data is, back to this concept of, mobile versus desktop. the fact that mobile, the amount of data you can get and the attribution models that you can create on mobile are immense. Because when you look at consumer behavior, there is claimed behavior and there's behavior that is unconscious. So when I'm on my mobile and I'm actually scrolling, the speed at which I scroll, my stop patterns, everything could be measured and monitored. And having data that actually starts tapping into all of these attributes and then trying to correlate it with realities that may or may not be conscious or for the customer. So I'll give you an example, pre-COVID and post-COVID. Pre-COVID, when a big part of our customer base are new moms and sort of moms to be. And part of managing your data analytics funnel is to know when do you actually want to start talking to them about which products. And you can, through AI, you could correlate the kind of purchases they make pre-pregnancy, during pregnancy, post-pregnancy, and you can start developing attribution models about what is it that's going to convert that customer to become a revenue generator. During COVID, back to the concept of attribution, we were starting to see a correlation between the infection rates and that monitor that we kept on seeing. People were transitioning out of the panic buying to, the rates are starting to drop. Therefore, I don't need to, bulk up and buy a lot of things. Whether or not they're going to use that, this is a psychology that happens behind, I see something and then my behavior across any platform is going to be similar. Attribution and data analytics help in that module to say, okay, what data is going to drive the highest revenue stream? And what data is going to create the most engagement for my customer in order for them to convert? And not only in order for them to convert, in order to know for me as a platform, what information do I want to put in front of my customer? We know that during the pandemic, there was a lot of uncertainty. And one of the things that happened with uncertainty, people want comfort. What are the comfort foods that we know of? So we've seen surge in chocolate, for example. We've seen surge in people wanting to buy strawberries because they have the comforting feel behind it. Attribution is so important because it allows you to really, really find out how do you maximize your revenue stream and what is the trigger point for conversion.
And Melissa, with your personal experience and now as a consultant, that really makes me very interested in your role because you work with so many different brands from different, categories. So it would be really interesting to hear your thoughts on that as well. I know you touched on it earlier, but maybe just to wrap this discussion up.
Attribution is got to be the bedrock of what you're doing in terms of how you're spending your ad dollars. Yes, and every client is different and every age group is different. So if I'm going to be doing a millennial strategy, it's going to be very different to a baby boomer strategy. So yes, the baby boomers are getting onto the phones, but it's taken them maybe 40 years, it feels like. I don't even know if we've had phones that long. But I think the key to success with mobile is to make sure that you are tracking your data and you are tracking it and looking at it on a regular basis, because doing it once a month, once a quarter, you're just going to lose out on opportunities. This environment works so quickly. You have to look at it daily, depending on this type of product. At longest, you should take is maybe a few days. Because if you're running campaigns, that old trading desk, you need to be having a look at what's performing, what's not performing, where to shut off the revenue, where to increase the spend. And this all happens real time. So having a look at all of these different touch points, and also, if I can add, is maybe just keep it simple to start. Don't go and chase everything. You need to start with building blocks, look at the big metrics, add a few layers, add a little bit more, add a bit more. So one of the projects that I worked on was understanding what were the best channels for our advertising at one of the companies I worked for. And we did a lot of testing because when we started, there was no data. So if you have no data, you need to test all the different channels and then continue to optimize. So this is all just part of that, having a look at which items you want to measure, and what your customers are buying over something else.
Just to add on what Melissa was talking about. So, we keep talking about data and we're getting data, and to be honest, there's a bit of also data overload, even for a tiny player. Like, so I'll give you an example. In Bulkwhiz, when we started with our dashboards, we started off with like 3 basic dashboards. How much are we selling and how are we converting and what's our acquisition plan? And now we're sort of sitting with about 48 dashboards of, endless amount of data. Is like, okay, how many times did this buy on promotion and what is the discount? And whilst it's nice to have, I think it's really, really beneficial to work with partners that actually can tell you, listen, not all data, there's dirty data and there's good data, and it's the good data that you want to do. And then how do you actually streamline that? And I think this is a journey of a lot of startups, certainly on Bulkwhiz's side, in terms of what do we do with all this information and how could we correlate it, and how does attribution allow us to really unravel new revenue streams. And sometimes you need somebody to come and tell you, listen, here's the correlation between the weather and chocolate, or coffee and diapers, or whatever the two connections are.
I know that connection very well, coffee and diapers. Yeah, that's definitely a very good point about data overload. We need a lot of data. Data is gold, as one of our Harish from our audience mentioned in the chat box. But there's definitely such thing as too much data. As long as you know how to read it, I guess that's one thing. But when you have so much data, you don't know what to do with it. It becomes overloading and then overwhelming, and people just try to maybe go back to basics and strip all of the data, and that's also not a good thing. So we talked a lot about the consumer behavior and how it's changed with, what Cleartrip experienced, what Bulkwhiz experienced. Nova Cinemas probably had a similar experience to Cleartrip. But what do you see about, in terms of, the future? We've basically noticed, there's a big change in consumer behavior. Do you think that it is formed now and this is now here to stay? Or do you think, obviously we don't really know the near future, we don't really know what's going on, but do you think that you will look at your strategies in the short intervals and maybe reevaluate? How do you see, let's go to Matthew, from a Cleartrip perspective, people have started flying again and booking holidays, but how do you find the new customer behavior will change your strategy?
So one of the things we consistently talk about, we talk about media consumption patterns within our audience. So if you look at the way any millennial is consuming media, I can guarantee you they haven't opened up a desktop in a very, very long time. In fact, they probably don't know the password to their desktop. So when you are talking to consumers and when you're advertising and they're sharing information, consuming information, that isn't being done through Google. It just doesn't exist. When they are looking for recommendations, they're doing it through Snap, they're doing it through Insta. So the way they consume media, the way they consume news, the way that everything is consumed is through a mobile device. So what we've seen specifically, we've known that, we've seen that through our data consistently over the years, and especially, as Melissa mentioned before, UAE and also Saudi has had a huge mobile penetration, normally been the most mobile penetrated country in the world, and this has been for the entire time I've been here. But what we've seen is millennials have always had that media consumption pattern. It's been the case since forever, since I've been monitoring this. What we've actually now seen is that media consumption pattern has been brought down younger, or also older, sorry. So as we've seen millennials, we've seen this to a certain extent. That's now also started extending out to boomers and kind of X generation, where the ability for them to go onto their laptop, or before we then make that decision to say, hey, instead of doing this on my phone, I'm going to purposely open my laptop. Like for example, Bulkwhiz, I still remember when I was trying to make a food order through a large organization, and I knew that their mobile application was horrendous. I made a conscious decision to have to go there and open my desktop and make that purchase. But we're seeing that not happening as much anymore, and that media consumption pattern and the media and the device preference of when do I start actually making that switch in my head? That's becoming much, much later on. So we're seeing mobile usage now and purchase was on a mobile device, not only with the younger millennials, but now also kind of really moving up to business users and older generations as well.
That's great. Anything you'd like to add? I can see everyone's, me included, nodding because that's definitely true.
No, I absolutely agree with Matt on this. I think the mobile is the most personal device that you spend more time with it than probably your spouse or partner, and therefore the level of information that you give it and it gives back is becoming, becoming the way we live right now.
So I think, yeah, please go ahead.
No, I absolutely agree. But if we want to kind of pull out a crystal ball and see what the future looks like, I think this year is going to fundamentally change consumer behavior. I think people, as you were saying earlier, are definitely finding, oh, I can do a million things on my phone. Whereas they thought, oh, I could do a lot, but now they've been forced onto their mobile phones, because let's face it, we were all in our pajamas on the sofa working with our mobile phones. So I do think that we will see a lot of changes, and that's going to be pushed by the consumer. Brands can carry on with their old strategies. One of the things that I've been talking to everyone about is you need to have a look at what happened before COVID and what's going to happen after COVID. And if you're not really looking at what's happening in the marketplace and doing a bit of research, getting in touch with your customers, finding out what their behavior patterns are, or just doing a deep dive into your data again, you could stand up losing a lot of market share with your customers. So what that will look like, I don't think anyone can guess. That is the mystery. But one thing we know, that there'll be a lot of impetus in the market for a lot of people to be doing this. And whoever innovates and designs the best way will be the winner.
That is so true. We're running out of, not yet, but if the audience has any questions, I apologize, I forgot to mention that at the beginning, but please do send them across from the Q&A or the chat. You can do it privately or publicly while we wrap up, and then we'll go and have a look at the questions. So I think what we've discussed it all about how important mobile is, and the challenge is that even though the user behavior is focused on mobile in the region, specifically, the brands have a lot of different challenges, be it budget, be it the traditional way of doing things, the data overload, or maybe not knowing which data is more important to be able to start. But it's just, we can't ignore that during this pandemic. It just proved the importance of a really well-designed and user-friendly mobile app. And it actually is for more verticals than maybe originally it was thought. You could, traditionally, especially in terms of holiday or maybe expensive clothing or maybe bulk buying groceries, people always thought that users, they might look at it on the mobile, but they will go and spend their money on the physical retailers, or maybe the web, the desktop with a bigger screen. But that's not the case anymore. We've all seen it. So more and more that it is, maybe so to say, there's no mobile friendly e-commerce category, but every category in e-com should be mobile friendly, should let their customers do lots of different things in an easy way from the app. And it's just in a fast and efficient manner. And I guess our role as like third parties and attribution provider from AppsFlyer is just, we just need to make help these brands making data easily accessible and maybe more readable, maybe more in like a pill form, and help them get out of that traditional things that way of things work. So that is kind of my quick wrap up. Please, let's start with Mahmoud. If you could just wrap up, how do you see the role of mobile in the e-commerce space in the next, let's say, 5 years?
I was just last week, I was reading an article about you know, how e-commerce is evolving. And one of the things that I picked up on is today, as we sort of define e-commerce, it's a platform where people can actually buy things, and then we're talking about how do you simplify that journey, and how does the mobile device simplify it. I think the future, actually, the e-commerce is no longer going to be about the store on my phone. It's going to be about my phone being able to buy me anything from anywhere. So whether it's you start embedding the smart chips in your refrigerators, which is already happening right now, that it's going to ping you to say you're out of milk, and then automatically your phone is your gateway to say buy, or the ticket you want to buy to travel when you just saw a web. So I think the role of e-commerce and the role of mobile is actually going to continue to be the gateway to buy. But how the platforms, the e-commerce platforms, and the back end of them, I think that is probably going to see a bit of a change in the future. It's no longer going to be the virtual store that you load pictures and you say, let me give you the information, but it's about understanding what you currently buy and how do I serve you something that you may or may not know existed in the offline or the online world. So I think mobile is here to stay. How e-commerce is going to transform is going through a transformation journey in the next 5 years, and we've yet to see how that's going to pan out.
Thank you, Mahmoud. There's a very good question for you from the audience, actually, from Fernanda. I'd like to ask that because you're just talking about that. She, I think Fernanda, what should be imperative for a pioneer concept like Bulkwhiz to remain relevant as a platform in times where so many entrants have joined the arena to disrupt the concept even further? You kind of mentioned that about, the chips in the fridges and your smart home understanding what you're running out of.
To be very honest, as much as there's technology out there, I think the only thing that will continue to make any platform, Bulkwhiz, Cleartrip, any platform whatsoever, is customer service. You give the right product to the customer and do it consistently well at the right value, and anything else is sort of not a core thing. So I think what we try to do is to really use data to understand what our customers need so that we're able to serve them better. And, it's not an easy journey because, the human brain is not very simple.
Definitely. And Melissa, how would you wrap up our conversation about where do you see mobile in the next 5 years?
Yeah, from my luxury hotel background, one of the things that we focused on was the most valuable commodity for anyone today, and that is time. So anything that gives us back time will win. And it's that simple. If I have to go onto any mobile phone app, website, any place I need to be, and if it is going to take me too long to learn how to use that app, and if it's not immediately understandable in terms of what my end goal is, that is going to take away from a lot of success. If you can give people back time, because this is where I think everyone is moving to, and I just think the whole part of COVID, people have got back to their family values, and they've got back to spending time with each other and realized how much they were missing by being distracted. So for me, that any partner, any company that will take away that pain point or add value in that way is what will happen. And then to add on to what Mahmoud was saying, with the Internet of Things, if this is connected to your phone, sign me up. I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to have to think about anything. If I don't even have to think about the groceries I need and they just appear at my doorstep, I'd be really happy. So
I am right there with you. Matthew, what would you say about where do you see mobile?
So I think for us, when we look at mobile, we consider it a hard trend, as in there's been no data or no information to suggest anything other that consumers are going in one direction. That trend is here to stay. It's been here to stay since late 1990s. So that is a hard trend and is going to happen. At what time it'll affect your industry, we're not sure. At what age or demographic it'll hit your industry, we're not sure. But that is a hard trend that is not going away. It will affect your industry. even if you look at, say, taxis, no one thought that in 1990 that a taxi, entire taxi infrastructure would be completely disrupted through a mobile phone. It was unheard of. Now you can think of an easier way to get around. So for us, from a hard train perspective, we absolutely see that happening. When you look at the future of mobile, with a mobile device, you've got a GPS coordinates, which are actually accurate, much better than your desktop. You've got all of your biometric information, so most likely your eye, your face, and your fingerprint. You've got your complete contact lists, which is automatically synced across every device. Plus, you've got everything that you enjoy. So that's music, apps, everything. Where we see Cleartrip includes in this, when we look at the development process and the development product experience that we are giving people, we're not even touching 4% or 5% of the technology that's embedded into a smartphone. We're nowhere close to even getting there. So when we are thinking about the next phases of our product development, we're saying, how do we deeply integrate the services that a mobile phone has built into the services into our product, and how do we bring out those features to make sure that the buying experience or the browsing experience is phenomenal, given the access to technology that we have on a mobile device. That could be using historical geo information on where to travel to. It could be using information on contact lists of where your friends have done. So obviously, these touch a whole bunch of other questions regarding access to information, things like that. But when we think about the next phase of development from a product perspective, I think we're going to be actually blown away in 5 to 10 years of how amazing the experience of a mobile phone can become. Because I think, Mahmoud, you said before, basically at the moment we've just taken our website and chucked it onto a phone. Obviously, we've done a better job at how do you change the interface from a click to a tap, but we really haven't gone really deep into the access that a phone gives us at a product level. And that's kind of where we see the evolution of mobile going.
That's a great point. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm just gonna see if we have some questions, and we have 4 minutes left. So let me try and see. Actually, there was one thing that actually, Melissa, you mentioned about, when I asked you why, when users are using mobile, why aren't brands? And you mentioned about the lack of, finding the right skill set and finding the right people. I think Mahmoud also talked about this. It's actually what skill set do I look for when hiring for a role that will look after mobile when I have not invested in this previously?
Well, yes, there is a little bit of a technical understanding that you require with mobile. And I would also encourage you to look at somebody who has UX experience, good copywriting experience, and this is for the front end, and very good kind of minimalist design skills and understanding the customer journey. So being able to build out that attribution together. Then we need to have somebody on the technical side who understands the mobile technology that you can choose. You can build apps with a lot of technology, but then you've also got to make sure you're building it for Android, you're building it for iOS, and Huawei are also breaking into the market. So you need to make sure that you are where your customers are. Huawei is taking a lot of market share globally. So just make sure that whoever you want to employ is aware of the current trends, and that they have the most popular language, coding language for that platform at the time. And that I would just probe them on what they have used and why they like it and why not.
That is a great tip. Thank you. I think I'm going to wrap it up completely now, because we've got 2 minutes left, and I feel like the conversation is going really well, so if we start another question, it's just going to go over the time. But I really want to thank you for all my panelists joining us here today. It was really nice to get to know you and have this discussion. Thank you all our audience for giving us this time. I hope my promise from the beginning of this was going to stand out. I hope it you agree with me now, and I hope this was very helpful and insightful for everyone. And I think I'm going to hand you back to Micah now. Have a safe, stay safe, and I hope we can see each other soon.
Take care.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you very much, Etche, for moderating the discussion. And of course, to our panelists, Melissa, Mahmood, and Matt, for sharing the knowledge with the audience. This is now the end of the webinar. The video will be available for on-demand viewing within the next 24 hours. Thank you once again to everyone, and we'll see you in the next webinar.